Hi, welcome to another episode of Mutually Collaborate SME Insight in partnership with Unleashing Leadership Potential and Old Mutual. My name is Tsepo Mohotu and I'll be the host for this program. And in today's program, we are really discussing the art of mastering pitching, and I'm joined by Tonderai Kariwo, who is from Old Mutual and will share some insight into this topic. Welcome, Tonderai.
Thank you, Tsepo, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to this conversation because it's really on the minds of many people, especially those SMEs that are looking to introduce their businesses to the public. And I'm going to take a centered approach on funding, which is the area that I look after within the SME space.
Great stuff. Really looking forward as well. Maybe before we get into the details of this, just tell us who is Tonderai and what do you do, and yeah.
No, and thank you for that question. So I think from a brief background, my name is Tonderai Kariwo, and I'm the solution owner for funding within the SME space. We service small enterprises as a part of our corporate business, and our corporate business looks after all your large enterprises from employee benefits as well as other specific aspects. What we've done is we've taken a proactive look at how we can partner with our SMEs, and as a part of that specific journey, I've been brought in to look after funding and assist our SMEs to become funding ready as well as qualify for funding as a part of their specific businesses.
Great stuff. I think this is really exciting. In some of the previous episode, we really covered exactly part of what your role is. And today, in extension to those discussions, we'll focus a lot more around the art of mastering pitching. And I think there's a reason why we think this is critical, because it's very important for you to sell your business and also be able to articulate it so well that the next person understands what it is that you're doing. Because most of the time people have great ideas, but they don't really know how to just position and sell their business to the next person on the other side. What do you think really is the importance of pitching your business and be able to articulate it so well?
Yeah, so when it comes to pitching one's business, that is effectively the gateway to how businesses effectively introduce themselves and allow the audience as well as the public to get a better insight of what they do and how they do it. So your pitch is your entry into how the public better participates within your specific request. And I think key to that is being able to do a few things properly. Okay. I think it's very important that our SMEs are able to concisely describe what they do, yes, to be able to introduce that to the audience, to be able to highlight what they're trying to achieve in terms of the market. More importantly, to describe how their services, products or solutions will alleviate or solve for specific problems within that specific marketplace, and more importantly, how they'll be able to grow that specific solution in once they've actually introduced it to the market. It's very important that SMEs are comfortable being able to present this within large and scalable environments.
Great stuff. That's really good. And are there different types of pitchings that are out there, or is it just pitching? Yeah.
No, definitely a valid and great question, right? I think what we are seeing, especially in terms of how our world has changed, your pitches move from introducing your business, yes, to introducing a product, yes, into looking for funding, yes, into being able to understand how your customers can also interact with your specific product. So your pitches can be an elevator pitch, yeah, which is just introducing your business very quickly and getting buy-in. Investor pitches, which is getting investors to buy into your business and being able to fund that specific journey. Product pitch, which is saying that you've got a set of products that you'd want customers to be able to participate and procure. And then there are other pitches as well, such as your board meetings, yes, etc. So it really would come down to what you're trying to achieve and how you're trying to position that into the market.
Great. I remember watching Steve Jobs' speech when they introduced one of their products. I was really excited in terms of, and it was a product pitch that he did, as you explaining, and the way he positioned it, I could see people queuing and to really get that product. And I've seen Apple really mastering that over the years, because every time there's a new product that they put out there, the way they position it, and at the end of the day, it's still a product, but they will put too much effort into how they pitch that product.
Which is very correct. I think what Apple has mastered and what a lot of companies have then tried to follow is the art of marketing. So they're not seen as a tech company.
Yes.
They're seen as a marketing company that utilizes tech to evolve and have brand and market presence. And they do that with what we call minimal usage of verbiage, right? Because their slides would have a picture or it could have a word. And the marketers are able to effectively talk about that, utilizing that specific image. So I think when we use that as a framework or a reference point, what we're seeing, which Apple does very well, is the ability to take a end result or outcome and being able to position it in such a way whereby as an audience or as a customer, we're drawn into wanting to participate or be a part of that specific brand, because the end result of that specific presentation are people queuing up to actually buy iPhones, or we wouldn't even have it off an iPod, but we want to buy an iPod because this guy presented an iPod, and they've been very good. So we really are encouraging our SMEs to take that route, but to do it in a manner that makes sense to them from a pace point of view.
Okay, great. Maybe let's take the entrepreneurs through this journey, our SMEs, in terms of, let's start with preparing the pitch. So what are some of the research you feel the entrepreneurs need to do when preparing for a pitch? What are some of the stuff? Where did you really start? Yeah.
So I think the journey for a pitch and just bedding it down and getting it right follows a few steps. The first starting point, I think, just up front, is understanding who your audience is, understanding who your market is, and more importantly, doing some research on who you're going to be presenting to. This prepares you to be able to land a meaningful message that is already understood in terms of what they're investing in, what they're procuring, or what they should be a part of as a part of that specific pitch. Your pitch is a composition of a few different phases or stages, and it's very important to be able to articulate what the problem statement is, to also understand how you're looking to solve for that problem statement. More importantly, from a value proposition, how does that solution intend to evolve or work with the problem you're actually trying to achieve? And then more importantly, how you can evolve that specific solution over time. I think more importantly from a packaging, right, if we're to look at it from a practical sense, is how do you look at a problem such as unemployment? Being able to reduce it to the fact that it is graduate unemployment, and then understanding that in order for us to be able to alleviate that, we either need to introduce vocational learning, internship programs, or bursary or grant assisted type work notions. So ideally what we're now doing is we're taking it for something that is hypothetical, to something that you can effectively put merit to and see it scale. And with all of these things, because they're policy formulated, you're also then trying to make sure that it moves from being a policy into something that can be owned by those who will be able to embed it and make it a reality. And then if you're to look at it from a tools and a template perspective, what is there to actually assist within this? There are plenty of reference materials when it comes to pitch decks, right? There are also a lot of informational tools when it comes to slide creation and PowerPoints, etc. And then there are guides as well, because your guides would move from somebody who is doing a pitch for the first time to highly mature and adapt and is able to leverage those guides at a higher maturity level. So your journey moves through all of these sequences, from really understanding who you are trying to connect with through to what can you leverage as a part of building your material and preparing yourself for that eventuality.
Great. I believe then the next important point from a research is crafting that story and coming up with a story that would sell and that would make sense. So if I'm Steve Jobs and I'm trying to put this iPad and all that stuff, then there's a story that I need to tell, and crafting that story become important. So is storytelling important in presenting a page?
Yeah, I think storytelling more now than ever has become really important. Growing up, we used to be very connected to storytelling because that was our mode of entertainment, right? We didn't have a lot of TV. Well, let's say there wasn't a lot of content on TV. We were not distracted by cell phones and social media. So we spent a lot of time with adults and people who are older than us embarking or going down this journey of storytelling. So why is storytelling important? Storytelling is the ability to emotionally connect with your audience to a degree that they're able to understand exactly where they fit into your journey.
Yes.
Being able to do that in a manner that is concise, being able to do that in a manner that is packaged, would definitely land the message more positively, and also getting within that a level of buy-in that allows the audience, especially when I talk about the audience, I'm talking about the customer that you're trying to bring on board. It allows for the customer to participate in a manner where they feel they are one with you. More importantly, I think what storytelling has allowed us to also evolve and mature in is the way it's dynamic, right? It doesn't have to be limited to something that is corporate-led. A lot of the stories we've seen being told is somebody who started out in a space whereby they wanted to have their own business, but their own business was agriculture-led, right? So the dream at that point was, how do I have enough food just for my immediate family to have? But it's gone from being something that was subsistence-led to something that is commercial, because now you're not only doing your agriculture for purposes of what happens in the home, you've also got surplus that you can take to the stores, you can roll out to the big retailers, and you can also move. More importantly, within the storytelling, you're able to use visual management, which allows you to elaborate on things that cannot be conceptually understood at a word level. So you can have tomatoes and cucumbers, etc., in mass quantity, which allows people to understand that you've moved from a place where you had tomatoes in your backyard to
Now having a whole field.
acres of tomatoes. So we're seeing that as you take your visuals and you simplify them, it creates a greater connection with our customers who are able to then embark on, okay, let's participate in this venture.
Okay, no, great. That's really good. Then moving towards the components that needs to be included in the pitch itself, specifically, I'm going to say successful pitch in this particular space. Let's start with how should the problem or the solution be presented in the pitch? Maybe just unpack around that.
All right. So from a problem perspective, right, it's really important to bring into the equation what it is you're trying to actually solve for. So by that, you want the customer to understand what it is that is really causing an issue within that specific industry or sector that you are you're trying to deal for. I'm going to use my story or analogy of the agriculture storytelling, right? The issue that the agriculture person could be facing is they're trying to expand. They're trying to service multiple stores, and they're trying to also ensure that they're able to touch many corners nationally, right? Yes. What is their challenge? The challenge is most probably equipment related. It is operational, as in working capital related, and most probably it's also knowledge and information as well, because what they've always had to deal with was something that was very manageable and composed. So these three specific issues have got a broader impact in what the agricultural farmer is trying to achieve by growing and scaling their business. So in order to put a point, a very succinct understanding is being able to package your problem
Yes.
such that it's noted, it's understood, it's very clear on what its impact is and what it is that it will resolve if it is properly solved for. So when it comes to solutioning now, right, the solution that would merit that type of scale and growth would be, what is the value proposition that you are effectively bringing to the market? So, but effectively, by being able to grow, you're able to employ more people, right? You're able to service more businesses, and more importantly, you're able to also extend the relationships that you have. How will it work? You're going to effectively buy multiple plots nationally so that you can be able to have multiple distribution centers. What is the benefit? It means now you've got national rollout. You've also got a brand and presence that is not only centered in Limpopo, but you've got presence in Western Cape, KZN, as well as Free State. And all of these things can be packaged in such a manner whereby customers are able to actually see and quantify how you're moving from your problem statement into a solution that actually makes sense.
Okay, great. Now we've got the problem clearly defined and crafted in such a way that it makes sense. Then what details around the market opportunity and also around the business model? How will the business make money? What some of the details should be highlighted around that?
Yeah. So when it comes to your market, let's call it your market opportunity, and how you're trying to effectively manage that, there are normally key variables you look at, especially as a business, when you're going down that path. Some of these variables would entail the likes of what is the actual market you're looking to operate in. I'm going to take my agricultural example. Your market could be fresh vegetables. Right, and the question there might be how big is that specific market in terms of size, and then from a reach perspective, how many people can you reach it and how are you going to reach it? So you're really trying to understand from a market point of view, what is there that you can actually position, bid down, and be able to benefit from. Because when we start, and this is the problem with many businesses, when we start with our ideas, they usually are very good, but what they're good for could be very small. And then only when you're trying to make it viable do you then realize that the idea that you initially formulated, there isn't actually any space for you to operate in the market that you'd want to be able to grow and scale in.
I guess on that, you might also want to indicate whether there's competition in that specific market, or also as the 101 on business also teaches us that you also need to look at substitutions that potentially people would have in that particular space.
Very correct, Tsepo. And right now, I think I'm almost the bearer of bad news because a lot of our SMEs are never where you are thinking and how adept you are, potentially from an informational perspective, because their first, what we call their first flight is, I got this idea, I got to move, I got to do something. And only when they hit with their first hurdle do they now need to start thinking of alternatives. But by then, you've been asked to be a lot more dynamic in terms of what change should you utilize to move left or right, up or down, because it's no longer just about that idea. You've been asked to be quite creative in terms of what you're doing. And I think just to come back to the second question you're asking around revenue and how to capitalize the business model, right? Your business model, just like your market opportunity, also has got variables. And those same variables start to give you an indication of where is my money going to come from. So if I'm going to go back to my agriculture example, all right, I'm going to make money either by selling directly to other businesses, or I'm going to make money by selling directly to market, or I can distribute through big retailers that can effectively then move the goods to market. You have to think about this because your revenue streams will tell you how much produce you can shift and how soon. Once again, the nice thing about when you're doing something from a subsistence perspective, it's only for you. You're not thinking about it commercially because there is no money factor that is involved. But the moment you do go commercial, You've now got all your expenses for running the farm. You've got all your expenses for growing the crop, and you want to be able to get that repayment or that return in some form. So your revenue models are important.
Yes.
Your revenue model would also entail your cash flow. Cash flow is the ability to understand how you project for your business with an understanding that your business is going to go through cycles.
Yeah.
I think what we all do within business is we tend to think of best case scenario, and I think 9 out of 10 times we always are faced with the worst case scenario. So having a good understanding of your cash flow also becomes very important. And then the last thing is that from a growth perspective, it's also understanding what your levers are to grow the business, or if your business is just going to be cyclical and will remain even spread, but still being able to meet and manage its expenses.
Great. You've touched then on the next point that I wanted to go into, because I'm quickly taking the audience through the journey of you've now done the problem, you've got the solution, now you've covered your market opportunity and business model, and the next point then becomes the financial projection in terms of how much and what should be presented in terms of clearly articulating the projections of your business. You've just covered a little bit around that cash flow and some of that.
Yeah, so your financials is effectively the heartbeat of the business. I think the analogy that most people talk about is that your revenue, so your sales numbers are vanity, your cash is reality, right? Because without your cash, you don't have a business. Technically, you're insolvent, you're not operating. So from a financial perspective, it's good that from a business perspective, they outline their revenue. They also understand the cash flow. So it's revenue, understand your profit and loss, and then be able to quantify your cash flow. From a modeling perspective, you should be able to forecast this, and you should also be able to have a level of predictability between what is certain versus what you don't have control over. So you're almost saying that your revenue streams you should be able to know when certain things will be able to come in versus the stuff that is not planned for. And then from a scenario planning, you then move from a best case scenario to a worst case scenario to something that is in between or likely. And then you manage your business in line with that. If we were to look at your agriculture example, what we notice is that from a farming perspective, certain crops are cyclical. So you know that there's a period where you're just farming, then there's a period where you are harvesting and taking to market. If you're a fresh produce farmer, then you must probably you're in for it every single month, because every single month someone needs tomatoes, someone needs onions, someone needs cabbages, etc. So it's about being able to also select from an idea perspective, how will you be impacted by your cycles? And then also very important from a financial perspective, there's certain businesses that are harder hit based on economic cycles. What am I saying? I think what COVID showed us was that things can change very quickly without warning, and if you don't have enough buffer, you won't actually come out of it, right? So what COVID has illustrated is that when you start planning for your business, being able to take that, I'm going to call it that 18-month projection that says, in the event anything was to happen, am I able to foresee 18 months? That's the first thing. It's an unlikely event that you're not aware of. The second thing is, you would have noticed more recently, due to elections and other things, things are sort of going down, and now there's a bit of positivity because we've come out of that, and people are saying, when are we going to start seeing an uptick? So once again, due to your economic situation, are you able to go through these cycles, which are also, once again, something that is unpredictable but is based on fundamentals? Your business must be able to position your produce based on these variables that are occurring and being able to weather out the storm.
Great. By the way, you must watch the last episode that we did on economics that impacts the SMEs, exactly the point that you're touching, because sometimes SMEs do not read those things. And you just mentioned something earlier, because I'm interested in this space, and I really try read a lot and try watch what's really happening within the pitching space and specifically around the SMEs. And I've seen in certain pitching where people are grilled and they ask the questions, and then business owner could not even explain what their margins would be. They couldn't even explain just what is the projected expenses that you think the business would have, and simple stuff such as that. Very disturbing that you would want to pitch, but you don't have those basic rights.
And it's highly interesting you highlight that, right? Because if you're doing an elevator pitch, you're effectively selling your business across 4 parts in 2 minutes. You're introducing your business, you're indicating what you're solving for, you're indicating what the value proposition is, and you're indicating whether or not there is already benefit to be realized there and then. And if you were then to be put onto the Shark Tank or something like that, these things just go into more depth around that. Hence why the preparation around the customer that you're meeting and the company that you are pitching to becomes key. Because if you're going to pitch on what you're trying to do from a business point of view, you're only ticking 1 out of 4 boxes. And the other 3 are just as critical, including how involved and the depth you have within that.
Okay, so what do normally investors interested in whether we should include this in the pitch around the team aspects and the execution capability, your capability to be able to execute? I guess that should be one of the critical points that the pitch should include.
Correct. So your team composition is highly key, because your team composition demonstrates your ability to deliver against what you're putting forward. So what am I saying? You get 4 brilliant chartered accountants putting together a financial model for a fintech business. The likelihood of that potentially succeeding is low, because a fintech business is 1, technical, 2, it's got legal aspects to it, and then there is some financial composition. Unless these 4 CAs have got very different backgrounds in terms of what they achieved to that point where they were starting their fintech business. So all I'm highlighting is that your team should be made up of different skill sets that are going to allow you to be successful in the long run. And you should also have a team that's senior enough to be able to hold each other accountable. Your team is your leadership, it's your accountability, it's your ability to get over the line. And then in terms of investment, your team should also have enough depth to be able to, as I think as we've been highlighting, when times are good, to be able to accelerate. When times are bad, to be able to dig deep and weather it out.
Okay, no, great. And then as you explained, I mean, just remember that from a team point of view, one person who was presenting, and they said, but there's no business here because you're the business, because they couldn't articulate how the team would work, because without you, then this thing is dead. And then who then can fund or invest in such a business if you the actual? So they couldn't showcase how that formation would look, how that team composition would look like. Okay, thanks. So I think I'm gonna move. The next one is really around how do you really communicate the actual ask of the whole pitch? Because, I mean, you're here for a reason, you would pitch your business for a reason. How do you communicate that need that you have and what you're really asking, and then how you're going to use what you're asking? And so really around that ask, after the whole presentation, I mean, you've put the problem, you've put the solution, you've articulated how the market opportunity would look like, but how do you then come and say, this is what really I'm asking for? How do you communicate that effectively?
So I think the first part to this is we're going to go back to one, preparation in terms of what that actual need is. And the preparation is, 1, taking your information, so your problem, how you're trying to solve it, what you're looking for, being able to package it. And then 2, then quantifying how to then be able to interact in a dialogue whereby you can be transparent about what it is that you're trying to achieve. You can also be honest in terms of where you really are versus what you're trying to get to. And the second one around honesty is quite key, because I think a lot of people at pitch level are trying to oversell the business because they want the investment, they want the money, they want people to buy in. But being honest around the fact that your ambition or your aspiration is to get to this level, however, right now you're here, also is very key. And then I think more importantly, being able to engage with the customer on very difficult and challenging questions around the ability for the business to be able to navigate through through that specific period through which it must go through. From a breakdown, right? I think it's also quite fundamental that the SME be able to package what they want in terms of the need versus what the money would be used for, versus what the operational status would be, versus where they intend to be after. Like you have a roadmap that says after 6 months, if we get this money on day 1, after 6 months this is where we would like to be. After a year, this is what it would be, and this is what the repayment period is. You should be able to articulate all of these things with the understanding that you are already looking for that money, which you would be given. So being able to do this in a clear and pragmatic manner is what I believe would be most key, but once again, with a very clear understanding of what your business is, what it stands for, and how it's going to achieve this objective with the investment from the investors. Yeah.
Great. No, I think that makes a lot of sense, because then once you've articulated clearly what you need, and then how you're going to use whatever you receive. And I've seen where people come and do this pitch and present, and then the funder on the other side said, okay, what equity are you giving? And they're like, what equity? I didn't even think of that. Yeah. So because you could pitch for multiple options in terms of whatever the type of funding that you have, and some might be interested in getting a stake out of the business, or is it really just getting a loan and that you're going to pay back? So I think you must, I assume you must be ready for all those different aspects of questions that will come from the funders. Yeah.
100% correct, right? And it comes back to researching your audience. Yeah. Because if you really understand the company from the get-go, you may already know that you're going into a pitch whereby they are going to ask for equity because they are equity driven in terms of their stake. Yes. Debt funding, you would know also that, hang on, I'm going to funders that are only going to give me a loan or some form of finance, and so once again, I should be ready for that. Or I'm going to funders or investors that are going to showcase my product to other funders or investors who would then want to take a stake. So knowing the company from the get-go, very important.
Great. So I think maybe getting towards to wrap up the discussion is maybe let's just discuss around what are some of the common mistakes that SME do when putting their pitches.
Yeah, when we look at some of the common challenges, we could say, one, understanding what the problem is. In certain instances, SMEs are not able to really portray or communicate what that problem is. Challenges in terms of packaging all of the information. Sometimes the information can be quite complex, too wordy, or not cohesive. So the storyline is very difficult to also understand. And then from a numbers and an understanding of the market as well as what you're trying to do, sometimes this also does not come through clearly. Or the presentation itself is quite bad. There's not enough information around who's their market, who's their product, where is it going through. There are no visuals. So they're trying to put aside a message which is not coming through clearly as a part of the overall storyline that should be happening.
Okay, great. And I think you also mentioned earlier that having pitch presentation skills are also really important, where you ask to really stand and defend your presentation. Because if I have to type it and send it, it's different when I have to really stand and present it. So those visuals that you include, it's really key. I think you've touched on that. Do you want to elaborate more on that?
Look, I think you pretty much have summed it up.
Yeah.
Those are the key aspects that we would look at as a part of your your presentation.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. And how do you prepare yourself to handle and anticipate difficult questions that the investor might ask? And are there some of those questions that when you've done the pitch you could anticipate?
Yeah. Look, this one, it really entails I'm going to call it a format or an approach whereby practice, practice, practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
And within that practice, there are things that you may not know, but it's okay, because what you've effectively prepared yourself should pretty much allow for you to be able to put something through. So what should that practice in its own right come through? I think from a question perspective, there's specific questions like we were elaborating on previously. There's certain questions you're going to be asked, right? Like the numbers, like the markets. Clearly articulate your problem in line with what you're trying to achieve. You should be able to understand that from a very simplistic question to something as more elaborate as, can you actually do a comparison against who is in your market, who is the leader, what do they provide, what is the pricing, how is your pricing differentiated from the market leader, and how are you going to be able to stand out amongst the entire crowd? And if you haven't thought about these things, they will be very difficult on that specific day. Effective communication, right? So I think one of the things that our SMEs will struggle with or will find the challenging is you're moving into a realm where people are quite adept, because on a daily basis there are always requests for customer information, for investor funding, for product information. So these guys deal with pitches every single day. So when you come in there and your story is not aligned, your information is not succinct, it's going to fall on deaf ears. These are some of the common challenges that we'd see, and also common challenges we would see in terms of being able to respond to investors or companies that you're going to pitch to.
Okay, no, great. Thanks. That was really insightful, and I think some of the key takeaways in terms of the components that your pitch should include. I think we've covered that you need to know what problem you're solving, what solution are you presenting, what is the market opportunity we have, what is the business model, how would you make money, and what does that revenue looks like, how would you get that revenue, and also financial projection, kind of showcasing what will come in, what the cash flow would look like. So it's very important to look at that. That team composition and how your ability to be able to execute, I think we've covered that. And also, lastly, communicating the actual ask and making sure that your pitch covers what exactly you're asking and how you're going to use whatever it is that you're asking, what money you're asking, if it's funding and all that. But if it's product, I guess, what benefits would people get from it, and what exactly are you asking if it's really trying to send a message to the buyers to buy the product. I think just want to check if you've got any final advice for entrepreneurs while going this journey of getting funding. And
yeah, look, I think, Tsepo, you couldn't have said it any better. The points you touched on are points that every entrepreneur and every SME should have back of their mind. I think just to add and echo your sentiment, we're sitting within a space whereby currently South Africa has got an average of over 2 million SMEs. 30% of those are formal, which means they are structured, they're defined, and they are high contributors to the economy. And high contributors is not necessarily saying that they add a lot of money towards the revenue and etc. But what they're doing is, if we look at some of the key fundamentals we see in terms of economic growth, they're participating within that. If we look at the unemployment variable, they are participating in that. They may not necessarily be shifting the dial, but they're definitely making sure that that number remains manageable. When we look at it in terms of introducing new capability, new skill, fintechs, these are all being driven by small to medium businesses as well as entrepreneurs. So the growth of our economy, the growth of the African continent is only as valid and bold as entrepreneurs' ability to actually go down that path of executing on their business dreams and ideas. And through that, would they learn and understand the true magnitude that they play within a cycle that is hungry for entrepreneurship? Entrepreneurship doesn't come from large corporates and large businesses. Large corporates are there to remain existential. Small businesses are there to change the tide and to challenge the status quo, and we really need a lot of that in our economy, which is poised for continual growth and success.
Wow, that's really exciting. Message of hope?
Yes.
Any message of hope you wanna also add to that, to our young people? Maybe we in the month. I know we're recording this in the month of the youth, but what message would you wanna share? Message of hope to the young people out there?
So I think we are very fortunate as Africans to be able to participate within very changing and challenging times. And I think more importantly, we are geared to be able to weather the times and be able to also learn from these specific times. What we do have is highly skilled, highly pragmatic, high visionary leaders, and we need more of that stemming from the front to be able to lead all of those that are looking for guidance. I think right now is a very good opportunity for people to stand and be counted, because as long as we've got a lot of leaders, and by having a lot of leaders, I'm not saying that everybody should be leader, but people who are willing to lead and be followed, there is hope for those who are saying that they're here to participate within an economy that is ripe for opportunities and that we can effectively benefit from. And from a funding perspective, because that is the area that I look after, there's always money to fund good ideas that are led by strong leaders who can effectively cultivate a following that we should continue to inspire for.
Great, that's really good. Thank you very much for that and insightful information that you've shared, and the discussion. I really enjoyed it. I hope you did too.
Yeah, no, thank you for the time, Tsepo, and looking forward to the next episode within this series of engagements. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode of Mutually Collaborate SME Insights. This was indeed an insightful conversation. And remember to follow us on our social media channels. Our handle is Unleashing Leadership Potential. And remember to also follow Old Mutual on its social media channels. Thank you very much. God bless.